This is Disney's amazing Frozen 1. Yes, this may be a surprise for some people. Whilst there's a whole generation of people who have Frozen as their definitive childhood juggernaut, it did completely take over the world, the consensus for a lot of people is that it's pretty good, but not quite great and kind of overrated, you know? And I don't blame anyone for that. But regardless, I have a really good time with the original Frozen. Not my favorite by any measure, Wreck-It Ralph and Moana are more my jam from this kind of era. However, I think that Frozen's still a really solid movie. Frozen solid. But anyway, with the sequel being pretty definitively terrible, as well as Frozen 3 and Frozen 4 both confirmed to be coming, dear God, make it stop, let's have a look at the movie that set off this absolute monster of a franchise. And then realize just how much Disney's kind of flubbed it by not already making 17 of these things. Or like any spin-off content at all other than shorts.
Born of cold and winter air and
well, we begin with that Scandinavian-inspired overture, immediately putting us into the world of the movie as the logo rolls. And into some snowflake shots normally reserved for Christmas movies, but of course, makes perfect sense here. I'm curious, do people actually consider Frozen as a thing to watch at Christmas, or is this kind of good to go all year round? It is an interesting spin considering it is winter in summer, but then again it came out over the winter season. Anyway, this brings us into the opening number featuring a group of fellas cutting up blocks of ice, with an opening shot that reminds us that we are still very much in the 3D Disney gimmick. Hey, they set the movie title. Now arguably, this is the least memorable of the movie songs, which I think is understandable. It sets up the vibe of the kingdom well enough and has some great choreography, actually showing how these people function in this below zero environment and use it to their advantage. However, it's certainly not the catchiest of the songs. It's a decent enough opening act on the bill that you might not remember by the time the show's over. Plus, you are going against the likes of Let It Go, you know? If there is a ranking, no matter how good it is, it's still gonna be at the bottom for this movie, you know? Also, it really must be cold out there if there's no melting going on whatsoever. Gotta respect them making a trade out of blocks of ice. Featuring, of course, Junior, Kristoff, and Sven.
Come on, Sven.
Just gotta get the names in early doors there. Which means Sven must have been knocking on a bit after the time jump. I mean, apparently the average reindeer only lives 15 years, so Frozen 3 is gonna really upset some kids, huh? From this otherwise strong opening, we head over to the palace with the two leading ladies, and as short as it is,
Wake up, wake up, wake up.
this scene is crucial in establishing this time where the two sisters were close and selling you on that. Otherwise, the bulk of the movie where they're either clashing or separated simply doesn't work. You need to see this period where they were genuinely best friends.
And I like warm hugs.
I also forgot that Olaf has a weirdly good function in symbolizing that as well, and I like that he's not immediately this living thing walking around, and it's just a childhood creation. Plus, kind of dark if Elsa had just unalived him for like 10 years. The child has a kill count, technically. This is also a good point to acknowledge just how much the Disney animation team freed themselves by going off-book with the source material. Because yes, this is actually based on the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale, The Snow Queen. Which seems kind of obvious once you'd say it out loud, yet this movie is so far removed from that actual fairy tale that you couldn't be blamed for not really knowing that. In the original, the Anna and Kristoff adjacent characters are two children called Gerda and Kai, with the Snow Queen being a completely separate identity with no connection to either whatsoever. Just on that alone, you can see how far they've deviated from it. The Snow Queen being an older sister to Anna, and that they are both royalty. Like in the fairy tale, Elsa still isolates herself in an ice palace and all the rest of it, but the story that leads her to that point is far more compelling than the original, where the Snow Queen is just kind of a thing that exists. But of course, all good memories must end with childhood trauma. I'm not gonna lie, a horrible part of me finds this shot to be funny.
Elsa, what have you done?
From here, they go full-on X-Men parents on Elsa, treating her powers as something being wrong with her. And ask the rock people for help, i.e. the one group of Frozen characters to not successfully spawn loads of merchandise. Congratulations, you got out of there, I guess. Because apparently rocks are just boring for kids. Although, to be honest, even that's not true. Or at least it didn't used to be.
You are lucky it wasn't her heart. The heart is not so easily changed.
Set up. The rock troll guy then wipes Anna's memories of Elsa's power, and her dad then goes full COVID-19 on her.
Lock the gates. We will limit her contact with people. We'll reduce the staff.
And so Elsa grew up with absolutely no mental health issues whatsoever.
Queen Elsa.
To be fair, she still didn't have it as rough as Fiona. She still had a privileged life in the castle without being in a volcano-based tower. In fact, speaking of that, how did Fiona eat with all that going on? Did she have to eat the knight's remains? Well, at least she had a cookbook. Anyway, back to Frozen. We have the first viral clip that TikTok would have made even worse if it was around back then.
Do you wanna build a snowman?
And even though Elsa's literally been ordered not to hang out with her sister, this sequence does echo that experience of her younger siblings when the older one grows up and stops playing with them. It's a very specific experience that is weirdly covered here, and is perfectly fitting to put into a Disney movie that I feel like should exist more to really resonate with children watching Disney movies.
It doesn't have to be a snowman. Okay, bye.
Although I do feel bad that Elsa seems to be completely taking the rap here for avoiding her, rather than the parents at least admitting they're the ones who made this happen.
Or ride our bike around the halls.
Huh. That means that this movie must be set after 1817, where the bike was invented. You're welcome for that knowledge, now we know. Which, to be honest, does fit quite nicely into the old Tarzan's parents theory, for those familiar with that one. Add on to the fact that both of these movies have the same director, and maybe it makes more sense. They didn't die in a shipwreck, they got eaten by a cheetah a whole year later. Anyway, the song takes us through its time jumps pretty seamlessly. I mean, I've definitely seen much more jarring examples. The motif of each verse signaling the passing of time, whilst also showing Anna's unwavering desire to reconnect with Elsa throughout all of it. Into the present, and it's coronation day for Elsa, which means it's time to tour around all the characters who've grown since the start of the movie, and the reindeer's officially on death's door.
What do you want, Sven?
Give me a snack.
And I do like that there's a different take here to the usual talking animal shtick. This is a world with rock trolls and snow powers, so I'm sure it would have been accepted by the audience just fine. However, having Kristoff talk to Sven like a lot of people do with their pets is one way this movie makes it more in tune with its contemporary audience. You can tell that Disney were slightly more experimental in this phase as they took the dive into 3D animation, and playing around with their own formula in new, original, and creative ways highlights maybe why this movie was perhaps destined to be high quality, and then went even further off on one when the songs went viral. It's really interesting, because that's a really stark choice that makes it stand out from the crowd. Certainly no Wish, you know what I mean? As does this.
I bet they are beautiful.
Yeah, it's kind of been done to death now, pointing out how relatable this bit is. It's a nice touch, I wouldn't bring fanfare for it, but again, it speaks to the bolder choices made in this movie to shake up that old Disney formula.
Why have a ballroom with no balls?
Especially from 2013, this was, wow, everything. Frozen represented the continuation of the Disney fairy tale tradition, something many would say is kind of, old-fashioned. You certainly couldn't make $1 billion now making something like it was still in the 1950s, and they understood that. Alas, the major changes to the original fairy tale mentioned earlier, but also these small touches of a more modern attitude as well. Leading us into another song, and as a guy who usually gets annoyed when songs just suddenly turn up, it doesn't actually bother me here.
For the first time in forever.
They build up to these songs well enough where they feel like they transition into them, preventing that usual abruptness. The visuals of Anna matching up with the portraits are also satisfyingly executed. I like little touches that seem like small moments, yet could only really be pulled off in animation. I'm sure there's a version of it you can do in live action. I mean, you better believe a live action Frozen is coming, but not exactly like this. The back and forth between Elsa and Anna's two distinct attitudes towards the situation whilst still aligning into this one song number is also just really smartly arranged. You can tell the award-winning team behind the Book of Mormon are behind this. Minus every detail of that musical, of course.
Don't know if I'm elated or gassy, but I'm somewhere in that zone. Be the good girl you always have to be.
It's very much the introvert-extrovert contrast, except if one of them was kind of force-raised into an introvert. I do wonder what the guests were thinking, with the princess swinging around a lamppost siding as they walked into the palace. Anyway, the song ends and we get this guy.
Prince Hans of the Southern Isles.
Yeah, always interesting on the rewatch. It's a less offensive symptom of the wider Disney twist villain issue. I mean, cool, it's got a decent message of don't give yourself to someone before you really know them. Another play on the traditional fairy tale rules that Shrek's already kinda done, but nice for Disney to start unpacking these issues for themselves. But Hans just kind of turns into a completely different character later in this movie. Like here, he's still the same dorky character once she leaves the scene and he falls into the water.
Oh no.
So it very much feels like if you're going to reveal him to be evil later, don't give us a moment like that. Hide all the moments when he's alone to leave that mystery, or better yet, come back to it later, or put in, foreshadowing hints in there. There's technically one coming up later. I'll talk about it more and then work on how to make it better, I guess. It's really the one major thing in this movie where I and a lot of people think that could have been done better. Should have been a little bit more hands-on.
Your Majesty, the gloves.
Moving on, Elsa gets herself coronated, where they manage to keep agency to the scene with her constantly on guard about her powers. It enlightens us further on her character, as well as further understanding her levels of caution. Just touching anything could expose her powers. Other than the power-proof gloves, I guess. The subsequent interaction between the two sisters is another highlight. Even the animation of Anna's awkward body language is something to be appreciated on rewatch. Let alone the dialogue and the vocal performances.
Hi, me? Hi?
Once again, a dynamic and emotion you wouldn't really see in a more traditional Disney princess movie. There's criticisms of making these stories more contemporary as well, but ultimately telling these stories in a way that young people can identify the behaviors and attitudes within is what will open both it and then the older stuff to new audiences. Onto the Weaseltown appreciation spot.
Weaselton!
You gotta appreciate Alan Tudyk when he shows up, don't you? Particularly the callback to this joke with an actual Weevil in Zootropolis as well.
It's Weaselton. Duke Weaselton.
So great to have the gates open. Why did they shut them in the first place?
Indeed, the question of what's been going on all these years soon begins to show themselves, particularly through Anna.
But it can't.
Well, why not? I
It
mean,
just can't.
Not to worry though, old Twist Villain McGee here's still a placid little charmer so they can have their fast-moving relationship song.
love is an open
Meanwhile, I presume Elsa's just kind of awkwardly standing by herself as she doesn't know anyone. Great. We all know there's some solid song numbers in this movie, and this one is certainly amongst them. It's why I'm not as peeved by the twist villain on this occasion, as at least there is that tackling of two characters supposedly falling in love immediately, despite not really knowing each other. I mean, Enchanted already did that very explicitly just 5 years earlier, but still. It's nice to see a mainline Disney animated movie address it, so it's no longer just the satire of Disney movies that have done it. That being said, here is the big foreshadowing mishap. The closest thing to a hint you can find about Hans is in this line right here.
I mean, it's crazy.
What?
We finish each other's.
sandwiches.
That's what I was gonna say.
Was he? I guess that's the hint, that they genuinely don't know each other? I think the tiniest detail you could have done is Hans looking genuinely perturbed by just like the eyes. Make the eyes act a little bit in confusion or, disgruntledness, however subtle you want to make it, after that line's delivered. You say, that's what I was gonna say. And then they do a little bit of acting on Anna's next line.
I mean, it's crazy.
What?
We finish each other's.
Sandwiches.
She's crazy.
The smallest detail is all you need. It's the same, not as subtle, but it's the same as, in my head, the rabbit from Hoodwinked, where he kicks little Red out of the carriage, and then for one shot, you see him looking evil in the distance, and you're like, plot twist villain that I noticed because of a subtle background-ish detail that I didn't notice when I watched it as a kid because we were all dumb kids and we didn't know plots yet. There was your best moment to highlight a foreshadowing that you could enjoy on rewatch, and there's nothing there. He just rolls along with it. He's too good of an actor. Make him act actually like his full character is on show. For a split second in a song number that will get repeated loads of times anyway, so people can notice it. That's the biggest flaw, the worst part to me in this movie, because that's the part where they had potential and they missed it. Everything else though, so far, yeah, pretty solid.
Frozen solid.
Anyway, there's that ramble done on the side. Let's conclude the song now.
Can I say something crazy? Will you marry me?
I mean, I'm sure it works for some people. Married at First Sight's been a reality TV show for a long time, a show that Elsa clearly wouldn't be a fan of.
You can't marry a man you just met.
It's a good point, but sadly Anna's carrying a lot of emotional baggage to fire right back at her.
All you know is how to shut people out.
By the time this clash comes around, it feels like an earned crescendo at all we've seen up to this point. It's been an argument that's been waiting to happen, and the communicative parents aren't there to fill in the gaps.
What did I ever do to you?
And it's kind of inevitable where it's going to end. Looks like the icicle's been let out of the arm.
sorcery.
Considering Idina Menzel got her big break in Wicked, I guess she's always playing these magic-powered outcasts. The panic and paranoia from Elsa's perspective is captured so well here that you completely get that exposed feeling. That desperation for solitude and space whilst hundreds of faces are staring at you. We've all had some kind of version of it at some point. It's certainly a favorite of my nightmares to go back to the well of. You know, I once tried to sing a song number and I forgot the lyrics while on stage, and then we redid the song, and I did it again. Anyway, the difference in this scenario is I don't freeze an entire kingdom when that actually happens. By the time she runs off to that old kingdom of isolation, you totally get it.
It's snowing! The Queen has cursed this land!
I also just love Weaseltown's
Weaselton.
completely over-the-top physicality throughout this movie as well. He moves like halfway across the screen every time he's saying something. It kind of reminds me of how they managed to make Robin Williams' performance in Aladdin. There you go, Alan Tudyk. Boom. Compliment. You're welcome. Anna acknowledges that she's the one who kind of caused all of this, though, to be fair, she had no idea about her sister being Frozone. That's what's so good about how we've gotten to this situation, though. It's fully unfolded from the setup events in a way where you can't really outright blame either sister. Their actions are informed by the events of that opening sequence. So you do have to wonder if explaining to Anna once she was a bit older about Elsa's situation would have eased things a little bit here.
I leave Prince Hans in charge.
Anyway, Anna leaves Prince Amatwist villain in charge while she goes after Elsa. All decisions that go exactly to plan. Meanwhile, Elsa gears up for the song that turned this movie into one of the most successful franchises of all time.
The snow glows white on the mountain tonight.
I still remember this one clip going viral on YouTube at the time. You could not escape it. And now children are out there older than this song itself. They'd be 12.
Let it go, let it go.
Just giving up this one scene on YouTube, despite being the highlight of the movie, was probably the single best piece of marketing they did here, and probably ever have, and for some reason ever will. Disney doesn't do this anymore. Why? This is baffling to me. Or maybe they do and they just don't succeed as well. But I think there's a serious essay waiting to be made about how Disney did the marketing for this movie and how it's just not applying to the modern stuff. I don't know. They really hit a perfect catalyst here. There was some magic in the air that they capitalized on, and it's just not the same anymore. Maybe it's because they make it too lyrical? Too sing-alongy? I don't know. Anyway.
A kingdom of isolation, and it looks like I'm the queen.
When you have something good, letting people know this in no uncertain terms can make all the difference. Honesty and marketing don't align very often, but they certainly did here. And it's not just the song itself, the animation is at its very best in this moment. I mean, across the board, Elsa's powers are just striking in how they're animated. I love how you can almost see each snowflake's shape as she strikes them out here. Through both animation and song, you are both fully bought into this character creating an entire castle in under 2 minutes, and it doesn't seem weird whatsoever. It's also the payoff of this character we've only seen completely repressed up to this point. I mean, duh, the song's literally called Let It Go. Instead of this ambiguous, tyrannical Snow Queen figure, we have someone who we are actively rooting for in expressing her powers and going against the life she's been forced to lead since a child. It's a song that's become an overexposed earworm for a reason. It's a solid song that embodies the character with some solid marketing choices behind it too, and it's kind of a climax of its own character development despite only being halfway through the movie. But it's such a satisfying hit that puts you on top of the world for a time. I never quite enjoyed as much now that it's been absolutely played within a micro inch of its life, but I can still recognize that it's absolutely the best song in this movie. As much as I was a personal fan of Do You Want to Build a Snowman, namely because I had a childhood crush on Kristen Bell.
Wandering Oaken's trading post and sauna.
Anyway, speaking of, Anna comes into contact with a character I completely forgot about.
Half-off swimming suits, clogs, and a sunbalm of my own invention, yeah?
Once again, I guess we saved the geographically accurate accents for the comedy characters. Though I'd watch a movie version where Elsa and Anna say "ya" after every sentence, why not? That's our cue for Kristoff to have his big, mysterious entrance. I do wonder though, if we hadn't seen him as an adult yet, whether that would have been more impactful. But hey, I still think it does the job.
You want to talk about a supply and demand problem? I sell ice for a living.
I mean, hey, at least all your products won't melt now. Nonetheless, it's a good motivation for Kristoff ultimately helping Anna in a way that was set up from literally the first shot of the movie. Give those ice cutters some love. And after spotting a couple of Mickey Mouse Easter eggs in the background on the shelvings, onto the song with all kinds of connotations. Because Disney were daring in this phase of experimentation.
Reindeers are better than people.
It's just a step away from fan fiction, that's all I'm saying. Anyway, as Anna comes into getting Kristoff on board, we of course begin this relationship being a complete contrast to the supposedly ideal Hans. Cue some solid physical comedy.
And you forgot the carrots for Sven.
Not just funny for the sake of it, as we have plenty of character work running here too.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't... We leave now.
I like that blend of giving her that agency whilst still not dropping the other parts of the character we've mentioned. And in case it wasn't spelled out enough, Kristoff makes sure this movie fully calls out the married by morning trope.
Didn't your parents ever warn you about strangers?
No, they're dead. Hey, you made it to the halfway mark of this video, come subscribe. Cheers.
Didn't your parents ever warn you about strangers?
No, they're dead. Whilst also sneaking this joke in there.
Foot size?
Foot size doesn't matter.
Brave move, Disney. Plus, the writing of this conversation is once again authentic to that more contemporary way of speaking. It really is just like watching two people talking. There's no melodrama to it, it is just two people talking about relationships. People found this movie refreshing for a reason, and small moments like this are a big part of that. Are we about to meet a childlike snowman who is about as cartoony as you get? Yeah, sure. But there is a balance being demonstrated here, whilst also not going so far that it breaks the world building we've established with more modern colloquialisms and references. I'm looking at you, Moana 2. Shrek had basically made its own brand out of doing pop culture laced dialogue with fairy tales really well, so it was definitely wise they didn't do that. But you can be contemporary without outright breaking the fourth wall. Not to mention, they've literally kept the journey moving throughout this conversation too, leading us very smoothly into the neat chase sequence with some wolves. I love when what I'll call journey movies throw in obstacles like this, where there's no villains pulling the strings or anything, it's just what you'd authentically find in the environment you're traveling through. Alas, wolves. Not talking wolves with goofy personalities, just straight up man-eating animals that are an obstacle for them to cross. As is this cliff, which leads Kristoff to sending his precious sleigh to a Wile E. Coyote-style grave.
But I just paid it off.
Don't worry, buddy. Cartoon Logic insists it'll appear with some Acme products in the next scene.
Arendelle.
It's completely frozen.
Hey, the thing got said again. I mean, speaking of which, the landscapes that have been frozen over are stunning. Disney had fully got the Pixar smarts into their animation department by this point. You know, no more Chicken Little hideousness is going on here. Though someone of a similar height to the main man shows up now.
How about yellow?
No go.
Yes, it is time. Olaf is here. And big surprise, I genuinely don't find him annoying in this movie. I know I seem like the kind of person who would. I can't say the same for the 1,000,001 shorts they put him in afterwards, but here he has a clear role and purpose and has some genuinely funny moments. Most notably, this song number we just go to now.
I drink in my hand, my snow up against the burning sand.
It almost seems like such an obvious concept to have a snowman who yearns after summer, yet it's hard to believe no one has actually done it already. It's a genuinely clever concept and makes for a really funny running bit. And yeah, the visuals of him on the beach with a cocktail does break out the immersion of this movie's Scandinavian world a bit, but that's a trope of Disney movies for the longest time. Lest we forget Timon doing the hula whilst Pumbaa presented himself as a roasted ham.
But put me in summer and I'll be a happy snowman!
This was just a perfect way to introduce the character. His full potential right there from the get-go, whilst also moving the story forwards towards bringing them to Elsa. Meanwhile, we check in with the Frozen Kingdom, with the locals arguing with their weird Scandi-American hybrid accents.
You've got the bark facing down.
Whilst Prince, shh, I'm actually the bad guy, continues to do all the atypical, the writers want to make him seem like a good person endeavors.
The castle is open. There is hot glog in the Great Hall.
To be fair, maybe he'd win me over here too. I mean, what have Elsa and Anna actually done for their kingdom? But here we go again. Whilst his I was gonna take over the kingdom plot ultimately checks out with his actions here, I just feel like they could have laid out more breadcrumbs to make it seem like less of a 180. Like, what if he was the one who offered to take charge? You know, at least, I don't know. I do like the detail of the animated frost breath though. There's something Disney couldn't have done with CG 10 years ago. Anyway, this supremely evil character turns to his horse with genuine concern before summoning a rescue party. Wahahaha. Don't worry, more Olaf content is to come.
Oh, look at that. I've been impaled.
Can we get a version of that new movie Novocaine, but instead it's Olaf, please?
What the
is that?
With a brief bit of nicely underplayed chemistry building for Anna and Kristoff, it's then time to go to the palace. Kind of the closest sequence we get to the original story, with the two leads approaching the Queen's Ice Palace. Only that the circumstances with every character involved is completely different, which again, I think's all for the better. With both this and Tangled, I love that they both took core elements from these stories and then they did their own thing with it. Don't get me wrong, a lot of Disney fairy tales very much go their own way with it, with the source material being notoriously a lot darker, Shakespeare even more so. I mean, they turned Hamlet into lions after all. However, Frozen is basically a completely different story, borrowing the very best bits of the source material's iconography, and I'd love to see them do more of that. Full disclosure, I did actually go and see the new Snow White, and I feel like that's very much what they wanted to do there, only to completely retread on it and stuff the classic movie back into a mold where it no longer fit. Imagine if instead they had gone for a whole new angle with it, but done in a Frozen Tangle-styled animated movie with that idea. Call it Snowed or Poisoned, I guess. Better than Plowed. Genuinely, maybe doing a re-animated movie, I wouldn't perfectly hate. I mean, it would kind of paste over traditional animation. But if they made it readapted into a more contemporary form, they actually did something creatively different in a new art style, I think that'd be decently well approved. Rather than doing live action repastes of 2D animation, you do 3D animation in a whole new script as well, like actually changing from the source material. It's the same IPs, but reworked like a multiverse? Yeah, sure, Disney. Oh well, not where we're at. Anyway, the sisters meet up for a chat.
I never knew what I was capable of.
And it's easy to see why parents are happy for their kids to look up to Elsa as a character. Whilst dealing with the older movie's dated, marriage-focused storyline through Anna's journey, you meanwhile have Elsa here who has no romantic storyline whatsoever. You just have this character who is finding her power after having it repressed for so many years by people who couldn't understand it. This was more than just Disney saying, we know the issues with our older movies. This was when they said, we have other stories to tell now too. It's that mentality that gave us Moana just a few years later, as well as Encanto. Even Raya and the Last Dragon, the intentions were there, even though I don't think that one quite worked out in the same way. And then yeah, Wish. But I do hope they continue telling these break from form stories, as much as I think they're sadly now just fixated on an absolute sequels frenzy. Are there even any Disney originals happening in the next few years? I know Pixar's got a couple, but like, mainline Disney, what are they doing? Back to the movie at hand here, they also balance well Elsa having this newfound liberation, whilst still ultimately making her choices out of a place of responsibility. When Anna uses Olaf as an example of the good times they used to have, and potentially having that again, all Elsa can think of is the time she nearly killed Anna. Elsa's never the villain here, and is primarily trying to do the right thing, whilst also going on this journey of being herself. Sadly, a lot of people now feel like they have to keep themselves out of the way to be themselves, which is why characters like Elsa are so important to have out there for younger people. And of course, this sibling debate descends into song, a reprise of First Time in Forever. And that's another thing I really appreciate. The songs up to this point are well spread out in this movie. There's no 15-minute gap going on after two songs have popped up within 2 minutes of each other. You can tell that it's been carefully structured.
I finally understand. I will be right here.
As is creating the situation where Anna gets struck by Elsa. Her powers building as her emotions intensify. Something that could have seemed forced instead feels inevitable.
I can't control the curse.
But of course, Anna has no idea about the frozen heart exposition the troll said at the beginning, and so doesn't tell Elsa. To which Elsa, to really rub salt in the ultimately fatal wound,
No, I'm not leaving without you, Elsa. Yes, you are.
creates a giant snow monster to kick her out of the castle. It was the only way. It does give us a fun chase sequence though. Guess that was enough emotional family drama for the kids for a bit.
Don't come back!
We won't.
And it's just another testament to how well structured this movie is. It keeps its character storylines running along while still ensuring these entertaining set pieces are in there. Right after this as well, we get more of that Anna-Kristoff dynamic building again too.
How's your head?
Oh, it's fine.
Although Kristoff does quickly piece the puzzle together here.
What? It's
because she struck you, isn't it?
I'll give him a pass. I legitimately forgot he literally saw the first time this happened when he was a kid. That was the plot, Daz. Another thing with the scenery, as they go through the hot springs coming out of the ground, as well as being animated impeccably, it also feels well researched specifically to Scandinavian landscapes. When it comes to other movies like Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Little Mermaid, you kind of know they're in the country they say it's set, but the personality of that location isn't necessarily factored into it. In Arendelle, whilst it's a fictional kingdom in the Scandinavian region, most likely near Norway, they embed the kingdom into that part of the world. Back to the story, and Kristoff gives Anna the heads up about his dodgy uncle.
I don't want to scare you. They can be a little inappropriate.
Only kidding, it's the rock people.
Meet my family. Hey guys.
And they make sure to give some explanation to Kristoff's connection to them just before. Glad it was more than just a, yeah, I'm just conveniently friends with them for the sake of this plot, you know, that's nice. The scene's also doing a lot more than just explaining backstory. For one, Kristoff establishes how they took him in, as he's mainly talking about what they're like as people, as any person introducing a girl to their family would. Which of course, the most important storytelling going on here is just Anna's facial expressions as she listens to him. It just reminds me of how Aardman described their animators as shy actors. I also love the gag where initially it looks like he's just buds with just a bunch of inanimate rocks. But yes, the rock people. They are perhaps the most unnecessary feature of the movie. It's the go-to critique of the movie that's always kind of been there since it first came out. They don't seem to fit in with the rest of the world building. They just kind of exist to help explain Elsa's magic, and that's that. Interestingly, there was a troll in the original Snow Queen story. He was a villain who makes a reality-distorting mirror that freezes people's hearts. You see how that's all come around here? Anyway, they are what I'd call the great movements of the plot strand. You know, it's that trope. Whether it's addressing Elsa's powers or shipping Kristoff and Anna's romance, they are very functional for facilitating the story without having much agency in it themselves. It's as if they were the writers of the script, molding it into place.
She is engaged to someone else!
Her quote engagement is a flex arrangement.
Still, I don't really mind them. They're fun. Did Disney hope to pull a Minions out of them that didn't pan out? Maybe, but they weren't very much that much either anyway, so who knows. But they're fine to me, and I like their song with 1,000,000 lyrics stuffed into 2 minutes.
The only fixer-upper fixer that can fix a fixer-upper is...
They have fun with their little song number that turns into an arranged marriage, right up until they find out they've just wasted 2 minutes of Anna's death countdown.
She's as cold as ice.
Time for Elder Exposition to make his reappearance. I don't care what he's actually called. That's his name now for me. To be fair, there's not much to say this time. He kind of explained it all at the beginning, after all.
An act of true love can thaw a frozen heart.
Ah yes, another direct tackling of a classic Disney trope. Particularly with her literally in Kristoff's arms here, we are set up to think we know exactly how this is going to go. Hans is gonna try and kiss her, only for Kristoff to step in and be the actual guy.
We've got to get you back to Hans.
You know, like in Enchanted, with that guy from the Sonic movies. Yet with the direction that this movie ultimately takes, it feels like we got a narrative triple bluff going on here. I also like that it doesn't end up with Kristoff getting pinned as her true love, as whilst he spent more time with Anna than Hans, the true love label would still kind of be fast forwarding their relationship in a way that would seem inauthentic to the movie's message in the first place. Not only does this narrative ultimately fulfill the central story being told here and not the romantic one, it also further assists its points on presenting more realistic relationship expectations. As they head back to the kingdom, unfortunately, the supremely sinister and twisted antagonist Hans is now at Elsa's palace in search of her.
But no harm is to come to the queen.
Sure thing, buddy. Sure thing, whatever you say. The snow monster pops back up to wreck some shop, by which I mean just sort of slaps them because it is a family movie. No impaling these guys with icicles here. Before Weaseltown's 2 goons slip through to do the exact opposite of what the absolute good guy in the movie told them to do. Again, foreshadowing, a way of trying to get around it. Did he say in advance, I'm gonna say good things, you do the bad things, I guess? It's fine though, because these idiots have brought some arrows along to dispatch a super-powered ice lady who can will a sentient monster into existence. And also a comic relief. Those guys are basically immortal. Once again though, props to the animation of her ice powers here. It's not just how powerful the actions themselves are, but also the restraint and deliberate nature behind them that portray her as even more powerful. Right up to the chandelier crashing, just the scale of the action here between the animation and the sound design is immense. And here's where Hans's real intentions are not obvious, but at least finally a little bit foreshadowed. With Elsa imprisoned with her hands bound, there is something clearly off with the vibe, while still having it be explainable because, you know, she's brought on an eternal winter. And after fitting in a quick gag,
Stay out of sight, Olaf!
we're into the final set piece, with Kristoff saying the classic romantic hero stuff.
Are you gonna be okay?
Don't worry about me.
Meanwhile, the stakes that Hans is about to take advantage of are laid out pretty thick.
Anything happens to the princess, you are all Arendelle has left.
Clearly, this has been his plan for a while now, but the chaotic part of my brain does imagine the other scenario where he was all in on just being a selfless hero right until that guy told him that. It would explain the lack of foreshadowing otherwise. I mean, again, we've had absolutely no sign of this guy being a jerk at all, so why not make the twist villain a twist to himself as well? Though I guess in that sense, why didn't you make more of a moment of him being like, oh... Like the power corrupted him in that moment and you see it on his face.
Only an act of true love can save me.
A true love's kiss.
Ah, okay, I guess I'm gonna be a bad guy now.
Oh, Anna. If only there was someone out there who loved you.
There we go. Hey, I'll say it. It's a pretty good plot twist, really. Particularly with this movie's MO to mess around with traditional Disney archetypes. If only it was set up. I mean, again, Shrek already did that to a better extent with the Prince Charming archetype, but whatever. If they'd made it too obvious, it wouldn't be a twist, I suppose. I just feel like other plot twists have had their cake, whilst also having those key breadcrumbs in there earlier in the movie. There's a character hiding who they really are, and then there's a character's personality being completely changed at the end of the movie, you know? Anyway, it's still another good message to put out there that there are a lot of men who play the nice guy only to turn out to be these a-holes. Not quite as nuanced as the Megamind approach with Titan and all that, but, you know, it's good to cover. So I guess in that sense, maybe it's not as unrealistic as I think. I've certainly met guys like that.
As heir, Elsa was preferable. No one was getting anywhere with her.
In both a literal and emotional sense, the way he strolls around the room, putting the candles out as he monologues, is as cold as it gets. Once he has become evil, he does play it very well. And his switch back in front of Weaselton does sell his personality switch a bit better.
At least we got to say our marriage vows before she died in my arms.
The power play is fulfilled. As Elsa escapes and Sven talks Kristoff into going back, we get the scene that really cemented Olaf's place as an iconic Disney character. What acts more selfless than a snowman lighting a fire?
Love is putting someone else's needs before yours.
Which does beg the question, couldn't this have been an act of true love? This snowman relit the thing that is life-threatening to him in order to save her. Screw the climax, this kinda should have saved her. Oh well, it's the cutest scene in the movie, so I'll hand its flowers out without going full logic machine on it.
Some people are worth melting for.
As the three parties zone into each other, it's time for the climax. And I love that the Kristoff misdirect continues to be implemented right until the crucial moment.
Anna!
The tension stretched out perfectly, the snowstorms well incorporated to just add further ambiguity to where everyone is. And the best thing about it is, as Hans goes to strike Elsa down after framing this whole situation around Anna being the one who needs saving,
Your sister is dead because of you.
it all ultimately builds up to Anna being the hero of the moment. Another pillar of Disney's tropes knocked down in this movie. And again, knocked down a lot better than whatever the new Snow White was trying to do. It makes the whole moment where Elsa becomes the one to unthaw Anna all the more rewarding.
You sacrificed yourself for me? I love you.
Considering it really was Anna herself presenting the act of true love, as opposed to someone else, does that kind of make this outcome a quadruple bluff? Man, there's a lot of bluffing in this damn movie. Their final embrace is what has been built up to from the very beginning, fulfilling the narrative both functionally and emotionally, as all good stories should. I think by far, that is the biggest W for this movie, in how it invited a more complex perception of the true love trope beyond the decades of these movies portraying a singular version of it.
I knew you could do it.
It's an example to young audiences that love is the love for your family, and indeed friends as well. Which sounds obvious, but this movie has gone on to be so many kids' first introduction to this idea. And while most parents do just go, it's that Disney movie kids like, just stick that on, I'm sure its core message is something that doesn't get left unappreciated with a lot of people. Again, this is not my favorite Disney movie, but I'm happy to finally drop the flag of this being an overrated movie that's just good at best. Rather, it's a movie that symbolized a new direction for the studio and its near century of telling these stories, keeping the very best of the Disney fairy tale tradition whilst tackling the more outdated tropes head-on in a massively intelligent, creative, and thought-out way. When you think about it, that must have been a colossal task for the writers to try and get around and put into a perfect knot like this, and yet they succeed. And that is why, as far as I'm concerned anyway, that there is a lot about Frozen that allows it to be given the title accolade of Disney's amazing Frozen 1. It may be massively popular, you may be sick to death of the damn songs, and the plot twist villains not that great, but for all of the achievements it ultimately did make, this is a fantastic Disney movie, and it's kind of a shame that after this point, and after Moana, they've really kind of lost their way. But hey, soon enough we'll do a terrible episode on Frozen 2. See how the mighty have fallen. For now, my name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this amazing episode. Do tell us your thoughts and more about Disney's Frozen, and I shall see you all in a little bit. Bye-bye!